Okay, so today we have a special presentation. We actually have two presenters, starting with ALEC Fischr. I get the honor to introduce ALEC. ALEC, are you on? Can you unmute yourself and say hello real quick?
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Okay, and I'm sorry, you guys, I had to put on my little reader glasses because his his intro's just a little tiny on this piece of paper. Um, so ALEC, thank you. So ALEC Fischr, I don't know, some of you may know him. ALEC is from our Edina community. He's an award-winning director, TED speaker, and LGBTQ activist living in Minneapolis. At age 17, he created a short documentary titled Minnesota Nice, ? Addressing the rising suicide rates of high school students facing bullying in Minnesota. The documentary led to legislative changes through the state and was screened in schools around the world. As a sophomore in college, ALEC was named a global Dalai Lama Fellow for his advocacy work and has since been featured by sites including MTV, BuzzFeed, The Washington Times, and USA Today. Within a year of founding his media company in 2018, Fischr created digital video campaigns for corporate clients, including Mall of America and Hilton Resorts. Pitched original content to teams at PBS, Snap Inc., and investors working with Netflix, and has filmed client videos with appearances from celebrities such as Jessica Parker. Now a 27-year-old digital influencer dedicated to bringing Midwestern stories to Main Street audiences, he continues to use his storytelling as a catalyst for conversation and change. I just luckily came across one of ALEC's videos on LinkedIn, and it stopped me dead in my tracks, had me in tears, and the important message that it conveys, I knew we needed to have him come talk to us about kind of how the hidden feelings and thoughts that people are having since the pandemic began, and how it's impacted not just their lives, but how they live. And so anyways, so ALEC, do you want to take it away? I think, first of all, we are going to play your video, so I hope you have access to go ahead and do that. All right, so if everybody can kind of just mute yourselves, we're going to listen to this first.
How are you doing? How are you feeling emotionally?
It's kind of a weird week to ask exactly how I'm doing.
Should I be PG or?
Oh my God.
I have been feeling honestly really numb.
Motivation is low, morale is low. We're exhausted.
I can't do it. It's just not sustainable.
I had an employee say that they didn't think they could be the person that we wanted them to be, and it shattered my heart because I was like, you're my top employee.
I've gotten so many more emails than I've ever gotten from students that I don't know that are emailing me with these mental health problems that are so heavy.
Hobbies that I used to enjoy, things that I feel like I can be productive with, I lose interest in immediately.
I was so emotionally drained that I just kind of numb is the best way that I can think about it.
A lot of people in my world are really struggling right now. We're scrambling to figure it out.
What it's like when your regulars pass away, that's something that I have experienced as a shop owner that I just did not ever imagine.
It blows my mind to go into work every single day now and see numerous people with COVID. In the beginning, I would maybe see a patient here and there that had it or had symptoms, and now it's every single day, so.
Nurses don't cry, we're tough.
As an employee full-time, I have never been COVID tested through work.
not once. And it just is frustrating to see where those resources actually get allocated to.
It came to a point where I would see some of my coworkers stapling their face masks because we didn't have enough.
I've gotten some face shields for my students. And then I had a friend make me a plexiglass screen. Our schools weren't able to provide those for us, so had to get kind of creative with those.
We were going from like a $30,000 day to a $3,000 day, and then to find out we have to split that in half. We didn't even know if it was worth being open.
Our hotel lost $4 million of revenue.
You know, all our residencies were gone, so we had to change our way of gigging.
Coming in every day to like finding out like, do I have to lay someone off today? Do I have to lay off my entire staff? Is my company going to survive this? Was just like insane. And stressful.
I think that this is a moment where human beings are being shown that we need to treat each other better.
As people, we need to take care of one another.
For the first time, I felt appreciated for about a month. And then after that, I felt abused. I would get stomach aches before I go to work. I didn't want to go to work. I would cry during work, after work.
When you have a district the size of the one that I work in, it's so concerning to just put all of those students back into these buildings. Putting them all in the building right now is just forgetting about all of these people.
I'm a plus size person, I'm fat, I have a plus size resale shop, all my clients are fat. Plus size people, fat people going into a doctor's office often don't get the treatment they need. Like the pro and con list, when you have one ventilator and 2 people and like what's on that list, it's like, I can't fool myself to think that fat people would be a tick in the con column, you know? So for me, I just felt such a strong responsibility for my community to be thoughtful about if I wanted to be open or not, which like meant not being open and being like pretty vocal about that.
As an immigrant, holding my green card, I wasn't able to get unemployment because one of the papers was delayed. So I didn't have a permit that the government was supposed to send me on time to apply for unemployment benefits.
I'd gotten a new job February 27th. Since I only worked there 13 days, was not eligible for any unemployment benefits. So pretty much just went months on my savings.
Homelessness, definitely been scared of that. I've already been homeless before in the past 5 years.
So I was ready, you know, to make money again, and I didn't even think about it. When they say, you want to come, I say, yeah, put me as many hours you need me to. I'm going to be there.
I think this year for humanity, you know, on this earth has been about reflection. And so I hope that we use this moment to change in a positive way.
I don't think it will be normal again, like it used to be. Maybe we'll be better.
So Alec, I think you're going to share another PowerPoint. Is that correct? Or if you want to go ahead and unmute yourself and start talking about.
Okay, I'll stop this share, Alec.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks, Mary.
All right, let's see. Can everyone see the PowerPoint now?
Yes.
Awesome. So thank you, Margaret, for showing that and allowing me to speak today. I just wanted to share a project that I've been working on the last several months that I've found is both timely and important, just in terms of the context of the world that we're living in now. You just saw the teaser for the project. It's called COVID Confessions, and it's interviews with folks who are or who have been on the ground as either frontline workers or people who have been working at jobs that aren't jobs that they can work from home with, and just talking about what those experiences have been like for those people. And so far, it's been just an incredibly powerful experience as a filmmaker, as a storyteller, to get to tell some of these stories. I've been able to record over 90 people, their stories across 15 different industries. That's enough. We have, each episode is going to be a certain career or industry, and we have 15 episodes filmed. 4 of them have been released, including the trailer. And I just think it's been really incredible to talk to folks across industries who have been impacted by the pandemic and have really experienced all types of obstacles, but have yet been able to persevere. And so it's also been self-financed, which is something for me that's been important, is just making this happen. And so that's been an independent production, which is also nice because I'm not sort of tied down to any corporate entities or needing to produce it in a certain way. I can sort of have my vision with it for what I want to have happen. And yeah, here are some of the stories. I mean, there are just so many people I've talked to that have just experienced so many different powerful things. And I guess I just wanted to share it with you guys today and give you a glimpse of what it is I'm working on, just for the fact of sharing the goals and sort of where we're going with it, and seeing if anyone can plug in any way or just watch the episodes. So the goals right now, initially this project started as a short film. I was just going to film nurses and teachers. I was just going to compile a few short stories into like a 10-minute film. And as I talked to more and more people, I realized that this was beyond just nurses and teachers, and these were interviews. These were stories that folks beyond nurses and teachers weren't hearing. So I hadn't really seen any interviews with grocery store workers. I hadn't seen any interviews with therapists. I hadn't seen any interviews with, librarians or just across the board. Like it felt like a lot of the op-eds and a lot of the features were on nurses and teachers, which those stories are still important. But there were a lot of folks that were being left out of the narrative of how this pandemic has been impacting people. And so one of the goals is to look at 40 episodes worth of content, which would be 40 to 45 different industries, and how many different jobs or how many different sectors could we include in this. And so the goal is to focus on this project for a year and to be able to tell about 40 stories by 2022. And that would be about 250 to 300 people's stories across 30 industries, which I think would be just an incredible visual representation of what people have been going through. The other funny thing is this project started as being reactionary. And so the first couple of episodes were very much, what are you going through right now? What are you doing right now? What is the situation like on the ground? And as I started going forward, I realized it needed to shift into a more reflective piece. So what has the last year been like? What starting in March, what did that look like? And now we're reaching the year anniversary of the first shutdown. What have the last 365 days looked like for you? So that's been really powerful, to turn it more into a reflective piece, because I feel like I'll be able to film for another year, another 2 years, and people can still reflect on the past year. And another reason I'm finding it helpful is a lot of folks haven't been asked to share their story. A lot of people were not getting these recordings of what the last year have been like, in different industries. And so my hope is that this can be a snapshot of this time in history, from a Midwest perspective of what folks went through. So not only this year, but in years to come, we can look back and use these episodes as sort of a time capsule, if you will, to reflect back on what folks went through. And so another goal here, let's see if it'll pop up, is just to share those stories from a Midwest perspective nationally, with audiences around the country. An example of that, you saw some of these folks featured in the teaser, but doing an episode on nurses and really talking to nurses. Within the nursing profession, there are 20, 30 different roles you can hold as a nurse, and even more that I'm probably not aware of. So I talked to 9 different nurses who all hold very different positions within the realm of public health, and just talked about their experiences with PPE shortages, working with nursing students, working with community organizations and public health in general. And this is just an example of one episode out of the 15 that have already been filmed. And so a few things that were important to me was, one, including a diverse representation of folks, both racially, ethnically, socioeconomically, sexual orientation, gender expression wise, and location as well. And so that's something that you'll also notice in each episode, is that not only are the professions individualized and specific within the industry, but there are a wide variety of folks speaking, and it's not just one group of people sharing their experience. I tried to make it as encompassing as I could, with different experiences and lived experiences as well. And these are some of the episodes that I've filmed already. Obviously the nurses and teachers being sort of the focus that we've seen a lot of energy on, but also talking to folks that are in the fashion industry, talking to, you know, classical musicians or grocery workers. I just finished filming an episode on filmmakers, which as a filmmaker was very interesting myself, hearing some of those stories, and you know, small business owners, that kind of stuff. So these are some of the episodes that have yet to be filmed, but we're working on, which I'm really excited about. So hotel staff, you know, Fortune 500 CEOs, librarians. I really want to do an episode on kindergartners and interview kindergarten students and see from their perspective what the last year and a half has been like. I think that would be really insightful, just because young kids have such an open mind or are so honest about certain things. But there's just a lot of potential for who can be included and you know, how people can plug in. So yeah, I guess for me, what's next, building the series out. Obviously I'm going to be working on this for the next year. And so there's a lot of potential to interview a lot of different industries, get a lot of different folks represented. I'm working right now to connect to unions and associations. So one of the things that would be really helpful is if folks are familiar with anyone in like the nursing unions or teacher unions, some of those episodes that are specific that could be shared within those union settings, that would be really helpful, just to spread the word and just to have people be able to reflect and hear stories that they might be able to resonate with. And also doing things like this, just hosting powerful conversations. I'm hoping we can have a conversation, a Q&A about the work and just about the project, and being able to have space like this. I just want to thank Margaret for hosting and inviting me, because it's, I think, talking about the last year and the experiences from folks, that's how we're going to heal. And that's how we're going to move forward, is just by talking about what we went through. So yeah, that's what I've been working on. And I think the unions and associations would be really helpful. And I also, research-wise, have not been able to connect to a lot of Fortune 500 CEOs. So if folks know anybody at executive levels who might be interested in connecting to be interviewed for that episode, that'd be amazing. All the other subjects have decent ease of access with research of getting a hold of folks, but those are some people that are a little harder to get a hold of if you don't have a connection. So that would be nice if anyone has any referrals there. But yeah, I'd love to open it up to Q&A and hear if anyone's curious about the project, or just questions about production, anything like that.
So Alec, Kevin Stoughton did have a question. He says, does this experience make you more or less optimistic about our collective future? And then there was another question of, how did you recruit your speakers?
Yeah, I mean, it did leave me optimistic. I think there were days where I had to stay back in the production studio and just cry a little bit. There were definitely some hard days of production where, I mean, hearing a couple of these stories a day is very difficult. And, you know, for one 10-minute episode, you have 5 hours worth of footage, and if you condense that into 10 minutes. And so there's a lot that you don't see that wasn't included, that I'm trying to figure out now how to repackage and maybe create more with. But there's a lot of powerful, raw, vulnerable stories that have been told. And I think one of the common themes is perseverance and resilience, and just knowing that, you know, some of these folks have really been at rock bottom this year and have been left forgotten, and essentially have just been left to deal with it themselves and survive by themselves. And as pessimistic as that could make you, they've been able to rely on community support. They've been able to rely on friends. Some folks don't have family connections, but have been able to find support from coworkers or the job that might have had to fire them, but is still behind the scenes trying to support them, and things like that, where there's moments and glimmers of hope throughout this that definitely keep me going as a storyteller and make it not as depressing to tackle as a concept. And what was the second question?
The second one was, how did you recruit the people to interview? Where did you find them?
Yeah, that was a mixture of referrals from folks I'd already known, and also doing research. So for example, the nurse episode, I realized I didn't have enough Black nurses and I wanted to recruit more nurses of color to speak on their experiences. So I reached out to Black Nurses Rock, which is a coalition of Black nurses within, they have national chapters, but within the Twin Cities, and was able to connect with a few of their members and their president, which allowed me to interview about 5 or 6 nurses of color for the episode about their unique experiences, both working as nurses during the unrest this year and then also just the pandemic in general. So yeah, it was a mixture of very specific research to make sure I had a diverse coalition of people represented in each episode, and then also just referrals that I went off of.
All right. Well, thank you, Alec. I know we could hear more from you and watch more videos and all that. It's extraordinary. Please put your contact information in the chat, and anything else that's up and coming that we can kind of look for. These videos are really easy to find too, by the way, on YouTube. If I can do it, anybody can. But again, they're very impactful and I think extremely important. Please share them on your own social media platforms. I think it's helpful, especially those people that are in these industries, to see that they are not alone. And that we do want, I mean, there's people out there that want to listen and want to help in whatever way they can. So next, we are going to hear from Kathy Rendleman. Kathy, if you want to unmute yourself and say hello real quick, I'll introduce you, give a little bit of your background.
Hello, thank you for having me this morning.
And many of you know Kathy. So welcome back, Kathy. Kathy, let's see. Oh, need my glasses again. I apologize. Old age.
You know, while you do that, when we introduced guests, did we introduce Erica Allenberg? Just making sure that the whole club who is present with us today knows that that Erica is in the meeting with us this morning, and welcome as a guest.
Yes. Yes, welcome, Erica. All right, so Kathy joined the Education Fund Board in August 2015 and moved into the executive director in 2016. She was born and raised in Edina, and after college in Indiana and a few years in Chicago area, returned with her husband Tyler to raise their family. Kathy, Tyler have 4 kids, 2 Edina high school graduates who are attending the University of Minnesota, and 2 current Edina high school students. Professionally, Kathy has worked for multi-million-dollar corporations in the area of engineering, finance, marketing, and sales. She owned and operated her own small business in the Edina area, and she has held and continues to hold numerous volunteer leadership roles within Edina and the surrounding areas. Kathy has a Bachelor of Science of both Industrial Management and Industrial Engineering from Purdue University, and a Master's in Business Administration in Marketing and Finance from the Carlson School at the University of Minnesota. So and she says, I'm honored and excited to help serve the Edina community. Our children are truly our future, and their potential is outstanding. It thrills me to be part of an organization that supports their inherent gifts and assess them and letting their passions thrive. So thank you again, Kathy, for joining us today. And we will give you the opportunity to share your PowerPoint.
Thank you, and thank you for the introduction. I appreciate being here this morning. It's great to see everyone. I'm going to share my screen and take you through a little bit of background about the Edina Education Fund and what we are doing in our community, specifically within the Edina Public Schools. The Edina Education Fund is a nonprofit organization that raises funds for our public school system. We raise those funds in the areas of literacy, mental health and wellness, STEAM, and professional development. We were formed in 1995 by a group of parents who got together and decided that it was important that we have computers in the classroom. Much has changed since then. Technology is something that most of our, well, now all of our students have a device that they work with. We also have fantastic technology in our buildings, partially because of state funding and because of your tax dollars, but also because of groups like ours in the community. We try to go above and beyond what state funding will do for our schools. And I know Erica can probably speak to this much more eloquently than I can, but it is constantly a battle. We get a certain amount of money from our state and federal and local government systems to help support our students in our buildings, but there's always a shortfall. And I think we're entering somewhere around the year 13 or 14 of budget cuts, substantial budget cuts to our system. Why? Because it costs a lot to run our schools. We're always at somewhat of a deficit. And it's our group that steps in, like many other groups in the area, but as a mission-aligned partner of the Edina Public Schools, tries to come in and fill that gap of funding and bring those outstanding programs that we have come to expect in the Edina Public Schools. Things like additional STEAM programs in our middle schools and our high school, maker spaces for our kids to learn by doing in our elementary schools, and all of these other areas that state and tax dollars alone would not be able to fund. So what is it that the Ed Fund does? Well, first of all, I think it's important to know that we are not different in Edina. This state funding model issue is a Minnesota state funding model issue. And actually, Minnesota is not really that far off from anywhere else in the nation. We kind of fall in the middle of the pack in how we fund our schools. There are states that do it a little bit better, and there's states that do it worse. And in Minnesota, we are one of hundreds of education funds. Most public schools have a group similar to the Ed Fund that works with their district to help fulfill this gap. And I will tell you that the Ed Fund in Edina is actually on the smaller side compared to our neighboring districts and throughout our state. One of the larger foundations is actually in South St. Paul with a very large endowment and upwards of $2 to $3 million in fundraising a year. So our humble little Edina Education Fund, it is something that I like to bring to people's attention so that they realize that we are all in this together. We're all working for the good of our public school kiddos, and we are not alone in this fight, and there's always room to do more. The Edina Ed Fund does two different types of fundraising. One is our program fundraising, and that's when you hear me come to a meeting like this, you'll typically hear me talk about program fundraising. That's something that we are going to go out and raise money at the direction of the district in areas that they're looking to boost different development in. Those areas are, like I mentioned before, literacy, mental health and wellness, STEAM, and professional development. And you can see of the programs that we've done over the last 20 years plus, this is how it breaks down. We've got in our preschool through elementary school years, our middle school and our high school, we've had quite a bit of funding in the area of literacy, which shows in the green. Mental health and wellness is somewhat new for us to be funding in this light green area. Our STEAM area, which encompasses science, technology, engineering, the arts, and mathematics. And then our black area of professional development. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about where we're going with that program funding today, but also let me just touch on this other side of our large funding circle. These are our services. The Ed Fund works with many groups in the area on things like scholarships for our graduating seniors at our high school, to fiscal sponsorships of some of our groups that are smaller in size, are not their own nonprofits, and are just looking to go out and raise some funds for their individual groups. Our scholarships, we offer about 45 scholarships a year to our graduating seniors, and the Ed Fund acts as the owner of those scholarships, working with the donors to make sure that they can lay out what they specifically are looking for in a student and a recipient of their scholarship dollars. And then we have our fiscal sponsorship. This past year, when I've recreated this chart, I've split it into two areas. It's a little bit easier, and I'm sure you all understand. we want to look at what we would do on a typical year, on a non-COVID year, versus what we would do on what we did last year on our COVID year. This large area of striped is our Meal Fund COVID-19 response. That was a combined effort between the Edina Public Schools, the Edina Education Fund, and the other mission-aligned partner, Edina Give and Go. We came together with Erica actually last March to talk about what can we do for our families. The state stepped in and did a great breakfast and lunch program, which they actually have continued throughout the entire pandemic, where students can go and pick up breakfast and lunch for 7 days a week, which is outstanding. But then what happens at dinner time? So we came together as a small group and said, let's see if we can raise some money to bring dinner to the families of these families that need some extra help. The initial goal was about $75,000. We thought that that would get us meal funding for about 12 to 16 weeks. And I will tell you that it is now March 9th in 2021, and the program is still going. We ended up raising about $100,000 in the campaign. And though we are nearing the end of that $100,000, I'm proud to tell you that we have supported over 95,000 individual dinner meals, that we have distributed over 8,500 pounds of produce, fresh produce to these families, and over 3,200 gift cards to Cub Foods. So in addition to receiving canned foods and produce, these families actually get an allotment each week that they can go and spend on things like milk and proteins. So where are we now? The Ed Fund tries to look at larger campaigns. So one of the questions I get quite a bit is, what's the difference between the Edina Education Fund and a PTO? Well, this is probably where it lies. The Ed Fund tries to look at programs that are across buildings that cover as many students as possible and that directly align with our district. Instead of going into individual classrooms necessarily, we've been asked to look at large scale initiatives. And this year, our largest initiative is our mental health campaign. This is not because of coronavirus. This actually was in the works for about 2 years before the pandemic hit. We were scheduled to launch with this campaign at some point during 2020. It actually got pushed a little bit with the pandemic, but there is much need for mental health services in our schools. And I am very proud of the programs that we have currently in place and where we're going with this. And I'd love to tell you more about this. Last spring, there was an Edina Public School survey that went out to families, and we had over 50% of our families report mental health concerns. Now remember, that was early in the pandemic. I don't think you'd be surprised to know that mental health concerns have gone up over the last year. These were issues that were with many of our kiddos long before the pandemic and have just grown. And this is something that is part of our Edina Public School District. I put this slide in there. It's to foster positive learning environment and whole student support. That is straight out of our district strategic plan. And that's where the Ed Fund likes to work. We do have a strategic plan of our own, but we don't build that until we see what the district puts out. And then we go from that and say, now where can we fill in the gaps to make sure that the district is successful in what they do? So what are our goals in this? We want to ensure that there's mental health and wellness consistency across all students. I love Alec's presentation of the different people in our community and in Minnesota that are struggling with this pandemic. If you take that down to our small little circle of our 8,600 students at Edina Public Schools, you will find that we are just as diverse and people coming from just as many different backgrounds and the way that they are approaching their lives right now. And that's our student body. All of them should have access to mental health and wellness in their community, which is their school. We want to respond to the increasing need for our students and also for our teachers. It takes a lot to be a teacher any day of the week, but especially right now. We want to make sure that we have access to these resources in our own buildings and not have to send families somewhere else that you're dealing with transportation and additional expenses and just access. And we want to be able to meet the internal needs of our students in all of our buildings. So we came up with this campaign. It's a $200,000 campaign. It's scheduled to go over the next 2 years. We started with a small amount of funding to bring summer support staff into our buildings. Last summer, with the social unrest around the murder of George Floyd, and in addition to the pandemic, there was an increased need, and we don't always have a full summer support staff on in the summertime at our schools. So we hired professionals, or actually brought back professionals to help with that work. They did outreach to families, making sure that they understood that we had connections to meal services if they needed help finding rent support, or if their car was broken, to do anything like that, that we could help point them in the right direction, and of course serve their mental needs if they needed mental health concerns or any wellness support. Then roughly half of the money that we're raising, 30% for district-wide staff, 16% for additional training for support staff, that's professional development. Our students' first line of contact is with their own teachers. Sometimes it's with their bus driver. Sometimes it's with the person that gives them their lunch bag in the lunchroom. And all of these people should be trained on what to look for in themselves and then in all of our students in our building. It's crucial that we have professional development for all of our staff in Edina Public Schools. Those of you that are in the business industry know that professional development is something that you just consistently invest in, and we should be investing that in our schools and in our teachers as well. And then the other half is going to bringing in additional bodies in our school, therapists, to take off some of the burden of the overwhelming demand for mental health services. This $100,000, 50%, is going towards 5 additional therapists for our building. It would bring a total to 11 Fischr therapists located on site in the Edina Public Schools. I'm going to talk a little bit about more what that is. So in about 2 years ago, Hopkins Schools came out with a large campaign. They raised $100,000 and it was outstanding. And I remember sitting around our board meeting and being so thrilled that they were able to do that in one evening. But what that paid for was basically a therapist for a year. And the way Edina approaches this, I tell you that is we're very different in how we do this. We bring in folks from Fischr, from Relate Chemical Dependency, and through Park Nicollet for our grief support groups. And these are professionals that come and sit within our buildings in the Edina Public Schools and operate like they would as if they were in their own office space. So when someone sees a therapist at Edina, they are Fischr licensed therapists. If you speak to any social workers, they will tell you that if they serve students, there's really nothing to do between 8:30 in the morning and 3:30 in the afternoon, and then they're booked all evening. Well, come sit at our building. Let our students walk down the hall and visit you here. It is great for the therapist because it keeps their plates full, and it's great for our students because if you've got a kiddo that's in therapy, you don't have to go pick them up and sign them out of their building, drive them to their therapist, have their half-hour session, and then drive them back. They've now missed an hour and a half of school for a 30-minute therapy session. It's much easier to have them walk down the hall and get the help that they need. So what we're looking for and what our next steps in this campaign is really, there's part of this where it's the Heal Together campaign. It's from awareness to wellness. And what we're really working on is the awareness. And that's why I'm talking to groups like yours to understand that there are these issues in our own students, that this is not new and that it's just growing. And we need to help our students the best that we can. You'll hear that everywhere, that there's mental health needs in our school right now. And I think one of the largest misnomers is people will say, well, just send them back to school and they'll be better. And though I'm not going to tell you that sending them back to school isn't the right answer, because I think all of our kiddos do want to be back in school, I think we need to be very careful in how we do that. These kids are coming back with a lot of what has happened over the last year, and they need our support to get back and to get comfortable in their buildings. They need our help, whether they're 6 years old or they're 18 years old, and they're coming with different issues regardless of their age. We've got little kiddos that are nervous in the hall, and think about that. You know, you have a kid home for a long period of time and you tell them that you'll keep them safe and that they can only see their friends on a picture on the computer. And then you tell them to go get on a school bus and sit in a classroom with 20 other kiddos and that that'll be okay. Well, that's a big change. And many times our kids need to get a pat on the back and say, it's going to be okay. And let's talk about your feelings. And it's okay to have those feelings. So we're looking for awareness. We're looking for you to help us spread the word. We are reaching out to each of our individual schools. We've got small little videos that are up on social media now. I invite you to follow us on places like Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and share those videos so that students can recognize who is available in their own building, to see their therapist's face, to know where they're located in their building and know it's okay for me to walk down there and say hello if I need to do that. It's another person for me to reach out to. We're also working on the first ever all Edina Public School Assembly. It's a daunting task to put together something that, first of all, is virtual, and second of all, is appealing to all 8,600 students in the Edina Public School, from a 6-year-old to an 18-year-old, and keep them entertained and help them learn about mental health and wellness at the same time. This will be launching towards the end of March, right before our spring break. All students will be seeing this virtual assembly the week of March 22nd. It will feature some local celebrities and just telling our kids where they can get help when they need it. When that comes out, it'll be shared with the city of Edina, and I invite all of you to share it in your own networks as well. And we're always looking for help. The Ed Fund is a community that if you're looking to give a little bit more back to the kids in your schools, reach out to me. I'll put my contact information in the chat. Let me know how you want to get involved, whether it's serving on our board, serving on one of our many committees, helping us with a fundraising task, or even just being assigned to a classroom that you could read with some virtual kindergartners that just need someone to read to them for 5 minutes or 10 minutes a day. And let me know. Thank you for letting me be here. I'm guessing I've got a couple questions in the chat.
Okay, Kathy, I'm looking at the chat. I don't see many questions, more so just a lot of praise and gratefulness to you and the Edina Ed Fund for doing so much work with the students and school. And wow, it was great to talk to you last night too. I guess my biggest takeaway too from it was just, you know, as we continue to move through this year, there's a lot of optimism with the vaccines coming out and everything, but it does not necessarily translate into well-being with everybody. As we start going and getting back into public and trying to get used to another new norm. I hate to use that word, but yeah, these kids need our help, and we're so grateful for you. Thank you so much for coming and sharing with us. I'm already thinking in my mind, you know, to get our service committee chair, Afira Hazan, in contact with you, Kathy, to see if we can do something to help serve the school while they are still in session, as we've been doing service projects on a monthly basis. So anyways, more to come from that. So we just appreciate that. ALEC, you too, thank you again so very, very much for coming on and sharing with us the work that you are doing. I think it kind of was a great prelude to what Kathy had to share. Just really, again, you guys, and I think something Kathy shared with me last night was the number of therapists that are needed and that they're very scarce. Therapists have been under a ton of pressure, and there's a lot of them that are leaving the industry because it's just too much for them to take on. ALEC is again nodding. Same with teachers. So please support your therapists and your teachers and those that are working with our students who are just incredibly important to our population and sometimes go unseen. So thank you again, everybody, for joining us today. Again, thank you, Erica Allenberg. Apologize to kind of be racing through some of these intros with you. We appreciate you coming back and visiting us again. Once again, reach out to myself or anybody else. I know you know like half the club here. If you have questions on how to go about joining and learning more about the Edina Morningside Club. So next week we have Jill Howiller from the Leadership Refinery. She's going to be talking to us about leveraging the power of emotional intelligence to lead and influence. So please join us next week for that. And then also just keep watching your emails throughout the week. We do want to give a shout out to Mary for sending out a notification regarding Tim Murphy, who is a dear, dear, dear friend, an incredible Rotarian, and is struggling to come back from a major heart attack this last weekend. And so just keep him in your thoughts and prayers, everybody. We believe we have shared an address if you want to send a card out to him, but just please keep him and his family in your thoughts. So thank you again, everybody. Go out and make it a great week. And remember, Rotary opens opportunities. Have a great week.